16-year-old Emma Walker was killed just before Thanksgiving.
Everybody says the thing that they equate Emma to is light. She just exuded beauty.
Investigators say Emma's ex-boyfriend fired into her bedroom while she was asleep.
It was just after midnight on a Monday in November 2016, and the Sturchy Hills neighborhood of Knoxville, Tennessee had gone quiet the way small suburbs do. Porch lights on timers, televisions cut off, the particular stillness of a street full of people who trusted that nothing would happen while they slept. Emma Walker had sent her last text, a normal one, about homework, and gone to bed in her room in the house she had grown up in a neighborhood she had walked 1,000 times, in the home her parents had made safe for her. And sometime around 12:30 in the morning, 20 miles south, a young man she had recently broken up with got into his car, drove toward that house in the dark, and came dressed in all black with a stolen gun. Emma Jane Walker was born on March 20th, 2000, to Jill and Mark Walker. Her mother, Jill, a soft-spoken elementary school teacher, had always loved the name Emma. She'd had it picked for years before her daughter arrived.
The football in the first games that she wasn't cheering at, the football players had made little stickers on the back of their helmet. And the first game they had the purple balloons, and just in her memory.
Emma grew up in Sturchy Hills, a quiet, safe pocket of East Knoxville, with her parents and her younger brother, Evan. From early on, she was the kind of kid people noticed, not because she tried to be, but because she had this rare quality of being completely herself, loudly and without apology. She was sassy. She was sharp. She was fiercely loyal to the people she loved. Her friends would later describe her as someone who genuinely cared, who showed up, who paid attention, who remembered the small things. And she was funny. Not in a trying to be funny way, the kind of funny that you can't rehearse. Jill said it directly when she spoke about Emma later. She wasn't a follower. She was a leader. And that phrase stayed with everyone who heard it, because it described Emma perfectly, and it also made everything that came next feel even more painful. Emma had a specific, fully formed dream by the time she was a teenager. She wanted to be a neonatal intensive care nurse, to work with premature babies, the smallest and most fragile patients, at the East Tennessee Children's Hospital. She talked about it the way some teenagers talk about vague, distant ambitions. But this wasn't vague. It was specific. It was clear. She had already decided. And she had already taken the first steps. She joined HOSA, Health Occupations Students of America, at her high school, pursuing the path she'd mapped for herself. She also had another side that her family would later hold on to. She loved animals, completely, without limits. She had dogs. She would have had more if she could. Her family later said that if she'd had it her way, the house would have been full of them. That's the kind of detail that stays with you. In the fall of 2014, Emma started at Central High School as a freshman, and almost immediately she did something that very few freshmen do. She made the cheerleading squad, the only freshman that year to do it. Lauren Hutton was a senior on that team. She remembered Emma immediately, not because Emma pushed herself forward, but because of what she brought when she showed up. She really took cheerleading seriously, Lauren said. She showed up ready to give it her all. People noticed her, but not because she was loud about it. Being around her just felt easy. She was also active in National Beta Club. She went to Young Life. She had a group of close, loyal friends, people who genuinely loved her. By the time she was 16, Emma Walker had a clear picture of where she was going, who she wanted to be, and what kind of life she wanted to build. She never got the future she had planned, and the person responsible for that had been in her life for 2 years already, smiling, charming, standing next to her in photographs that would later be shown in a courtroom.
His name was William Riley Gall. He went by Riley. He was born August 12, 1998, 2 years older than Emma. He was a junior at Central High when she arrived as a freshman. He wore number 8 on the football team, wide receiver, athletic enough to earn a spot at a Division III college the following year. People who knew Riley back then didn't describe him as the obvious type. A friend named Zach Green said he was actually a little nerdy. When he started noticing Emma on the cheerleading sideline, it didn't seem alarming to anyone. A junior football player, a freshman cheerleader at the same small high school. It almost felt scripted. Jill Walker, Emma's mother, would later describe her first impression of Riley as the boy next door. Polite, likable, easy to be around. Mark Walker, Emma's father, a careful, measured man, said Riley seemed well-mannered, respectful, the kind of young man you don't immediately question. And so, when the two of them started dating, nobody sounded an alarm. But there was already something worth noting, even at the beginning. When Riley first asked Emma out, he was already seeing someone else. He promised Emma he would break up with that girl. He didn't, not right away. He took that other girlfriend to prom. Emma found out. And it's worth noting because it tells you something about the pattern that was already forming. She stayed anyway. Not because she was naive, because she was 16, and she believed him when he apologized. And that's what people do. It didn't happen all at once. It built little by little. As the months went on, the people closest to Emma started noticing things. Riley had opinions about what she wore. He monitored who she talked to. He didn't like certain friendships, and he made that known. He was attentive in a way that had stopped being flattering. Emma's parents tried. They set limits. They told her he wasn't welcome in their home. They banned contact at least once. But Emma was strong-willed, that quality her mother loved about her, and she kept seeing him.
They would always find their way somehow to see each other. It became sneaky at that point.
She was young, and she was in it, and that's harder to climb out of than it looks from the outside. In the fall of 2016, Riley graduated from Central High and enrolled at Maryville College, about 16 miles south of Knoxville. He made the football team, wide receiver, same as before. But then something shifted. By the autumn of 2016, Riley had been dropped from the Maryville College football team. Just like that. No games, no practice, no structure, no identity he'd built around the sport. Just empty time, and his phone, and one person he couldn't stop thinking about. And Emma, who had been quietly finding herself again during that same period, going out more, eating dinner with her family, coming back to who she had been before, had made a decision. In October 2016, she ended it. For good. Immediately. Mark Walker said she came back to herself.
She did become like her old self again. She would come out of her room, eat dinner with us,
She was
socialize with us.
becoming her old self. What Riley Gall did next is where this story stops being the kind of breakup story that ends with people moving on. He swallowed Vicodin pills and alcohol in his dorm room. His friends, Max Siegel and others, found him and got him to a hospital. He came back 2 or 3 days later and was said to be in counseling. And here is the part that is genuinely hard to process. At trial, his defense team would later point to that episode as evidence of emotional instability, of how deeply he was suffering. But the prosecution pointed to something else entirely. He had used the threat of self-harm to pull Emma back before. It was a pattern. And the fact that this didn't stop anything, that 2 weeks later he would do what he did, tells you something about the distance between someone in genuine pain and someone who has calculated that pain as a tool. Emma went to bed just after midnight. And then, on November 21st, 2016, everything changed. Sometime around 12:30 in the morning, Riley Gall left his dorm room at Maryville College. Before he left, he made a phone call to a friend. The question he asked on that call, according to testimony presented at trial, was how to remove fingerprints from a gun. He knew what he was going there to do. He drove to Sturchy Hills dressed in all black. He stood outside the Walker home in the dark. He knew the house. He had been inside it, back when he was still welcome there, back when Jill and Mark had liked him, back when Emma had introduced him as her boyfriend, and nobody had any reason to doubt him. He knew where Emma's bedroom was. He knew which wall. He fired twice, 2 shots from the exterior wall into Emma's bedroom. One bullet struck Emma Walker behind her left ear. The other was found lodged in her pillow. She was asleep. She never woke up. She never even had the chance to know it was happening. Inside the house, Mark Walker heard something. He described it later in a way that has stayed with everyone who heard it. He said it sounded like someone was in the house, like a door had opened and slammed. He got up. He opened Emma's bedroom door. He saw her lying there asleep. He closed the door and went back to bed. He thought she was asleep. Riley Gall drove back to Maryville College. His roommate, Andrew Walker Stanley, confirmed he returned at 4:45 in the morning. Before he went to sleep, Gall asked Stanley to wake him for his 8 a.m. class. At 6 o'clock that morning, Jill Walker went to wake her daughter for school. She said Emma's name. Nothing. She moved her leg. Nothing. Then she looked at her daughter's face. Jill Walker called 911. Deputies arrived at the scene and initially classified Emma's death as a possible suicide. There was no shattered glass, no clear sign of entry, nothing that immediately said what had actually happened. Then forensic technician Deputy Nikki Buells from the Knox County Sheriff's Office found something. A bullet hole in Emma's bedroom wall. Then another outside the house in the exterior wall. 2 shell casings on the ground. The case was reclassified as a homicide. Lieutenant Alan Merritt of the Knox County Sheriff's Office led the investigation. He was supported by Detective James Hurst, Detective Crystal Gibson, Lieutenant David Wise, Lieutenant Gabe Mullinax, Detective Edward Wassman, and Captain Brad Park, among others. On that first day, they spoke to everyone connected to Emma Walker.
First round from the back of the house struck her right behind the ear, behind the left ear, killing her instantly in her sleep.
Family, friends, teammates, classmates, anyone who might have known something. and again, the same name came up. Riley Gall. Not because investigators were looking for him, because every person they spoke to volunteered him. People described the relationship, the control, the behavior, the texts, the way he had treated her. Nobody was pointing fingers without cause. They were describing what they had watched happen for 2 years. Merritt's team moved to Riley quickly. When they sat down with him, he denied having a gun. He denied showing it to anyone. He said he didn't know anything about it. But Alex McCarty and Noah Walton had already told investigators otherwise. And then Riley did something that, in retrospect, confirmed everything. He sent Snapchat messages to his roommate Andrew Walker Stanley. The message said, "Please don't talk to the cops anymore. Delete these texts." Stanley saved them and handed them over. The case almost went sideways in one critical way: the gun. Investigators knew from Riley's grandfather that a 9mm Glock was missing. The shell casings at the Walker home matched that caliber. But shell casings alone don't convict anyone. They needed the weapon itself, and they didn't have it, not yet. That's where Alex McCarty and Noah Walton changed everything. Both young men had been watching Riley closely since Emma's death. They'd been listening to what he said. They were watching how he was acting, and something wasn't sitting right. They went to Lieutenant Steve Sanders and told him they wanted to help. What happened next, less than 48 hours after Emma's body was found, was one of the most precisely executed undercover operations in a case that prosecutors described as nearly airtight. Sanders and his team wired McCarty and Walton with microphones and a transmitter. They also hid a camera, not in a bag, not in a hat, but inside a key fob, something small enough to sit in a pocket and capture everything. The plan: Walton would invite Gall to his dorm room, casually, to hang out and play video games. Normal enough. They'd let Riley guide the evening. And he did. On camera, with investigators listening live, Riley coached his two friends on what to say to police. His words, recorded clearly, were, "You were on LSD. You were drunk and you were high. Your mind was altered. Whatever statement you gave them wasn't a straightforward answer."
He told them to make their statements unreliable. He was trying to build himself a wall of deniability using the people who trusted him. Then he suggested they go to the Bluffs, the River Bluff wildlife area, a quiet spot above the Tennessee River where teenagers sometimes gathered. He said he needed to get rid of the gun. He wanted to throw it in the water. He said, "They will never find it." On their way, they stopped at Riley's stepfather, Seth Donnellan's house. Riley went inside. He came back out carrying a black trash bag. Inside the bag, the 9mm Glock. Black clothing, the same kind of all-black outfit Emma's neighbors had described seeing outside her home. White gloves, tennis shoes, black tape, additional trash bags. Alex McCarty's voice came through the wire. "Oh my God, that is a real gun." Walton signaled. Lieutenant Sanders and two unmarked vehicles moved in. Riley Gall was arrested at the River Bluff wildlife area at approximately 10 o'clock that night, Tuesday, November 22nd, 2016. Less than 2 days after Emma Walker's body had been found. He still had the gun in his possession when they took him. In January 2017, a Knox County grand jury indicted William Riley Gall on the following charges: first-degree premeditated murder, felony murder, stalking, reckless endangerment, tampering with evidence, possession of a firearm during a dangerous felony, and theft for taking the gun from his grandfather.
His family posted $1 million in bond. He was released while he awaited trial. That detail is worth sitting with for a moment. After everything that had been established, the sting, the gun, the black clothing, the coaching of witnesses, he was walking free while Emma's family was trying to hold themselves together. The trial of William Riley Gall began on April 30th, 2018, in Knox County Criminal Court before the Honorable Judge Bobby R. McGee. It had taken over a year to get there. The delay came partly from the defense requesting more time to prepare. Judge McGee approved the request. On the prosecution side sat Knox County District Attorney Charm Allen and Assistant District Attorney Molly Martin. Charm Allen's husband, ADA Kevin Allen, delivered the closing argument, and it was one of the most quietly devastating summations anyone in that courtroom would later describe. Facing them, defense attorney Wesley Stone. The jury was 8 men and 4 women. Behind the prosecution's table, mounted on the wall so the jury could see it throughout the trial, was a photograph of Emma Walker, in her cheerleading uniform, smiling. It's honestly hard to process that image. A life frozen in a single photograph, while everything being discussed in that room was about how it ended. The prosecution's case was methodical. Their argument was that Riley Gall had intended to kill Emma Walker, not to frighten her, not to create another scenario where he could come to her rescue. To kill her. They walked the jury through the pattern, the fake kidnapping designed to force her back into contact, the man in black outside her home designed to put her in fear and make her reach out to him for protection, the stolen gun, the 12:30 a.m. drive to her house dressed in black, the phone call before leaving asking how to wipe fingerprints, the 2 shots fired through the exterior wall. And then they introduced something that would become, by many accounts, the most chilling piece of evidence in the entire trial. Riley Gall was an avid Call of Duty player, a serious one. And Call of Duty, a first-person shooter, includes a mechanic that players call wall banging. The concept is simple. You can identify where an enemy is positioned behind a wall and fire through that wall to hit them. You don't need to see them. You just need to know where they are. Riley Gall had spent hundreds of hours playing that game. He knew how walls worked as obstacles. He knew how to calculate a target's position through a barrier. And he had been inside the Walker home. He knew which room was Emma's. He knew how her furniture was arranged. He had stood in that house when he was still welcome. The prosecution argued that when Riley Gall stood in the yard at 3 a.m., and fired 2 shots through the exterior wall of Emma Walker's bedroom from 2 different positions to maximize the coverage, he wasn't guessing. He was wall banging. And that detail stays with you. Because it transforms what might otherwise look like a reckless act of desperation into something calculated, something practiced in a way, something that required knowledge, not just anger.
The defense, led by Wesley Stone, did not deny that Riley fired the shots. That was not contested. What Stone challenged was intent. Stone argued that Riley had not intended to kill Emma, that he had fired through the wall to frighten her, to create another crisis, another moment where he could show up and be her protector. The way he had staged the kidnapping, the way he had been the man in black and then showed up to calm her down. That this was consistent, Stone said,
with a young man who was emotionally desperate and broken, not a premeditated killer. Stone also argued that to believe Riley intended to kill Emma, you would have to believe he knew exactly where her head would be on the bed, down to that level of precision. The prosecution's answer to that was quiet and direct. He had been in her room. He knew where her bed was. He fired from 2 angles to cover the space, and one of those bullets hit a sleeping 16-year-old girl behind her left ear. Key testimony came from Jill Walker, who was the first witness called, and who sat in that chair and described the morning she found her daughter. The 911 call was played for the jury, and in a courtroom that had already heard difficult things, the sound of Jill Walker's voice on that recording was the thing that broke people. Mark Walker testified about the sound he heard that night, the noise like a door opening and slamming, and how he had gone to Emma's room, seen her lying there, and gone back to sleep. That testimony carried its own weight that nobody in the room could fully absorb. Evan Walker, Emma's brother, testified about his sister, about the family she was part of, about what her absence had done to them. Alex McCarty and Noah Walton took the stand. The body camera footage, the key fob recording, was played for the jury. They watched Riley coach his friends to lie to police. They watched him retrieve the trash bag from his stepfather's house. They watched him walk toward the river. Friends described the controlling behavior, the texts, the monitoring, the isolation. Lauren Hutton spoke about who Emma had been. Keegan Lyle described the final months, the decision Emma had made, the clarity she'd found. Forensic expert Bobby Jones presented a 3-dimensional recreation of the crime scene, showing the trajectory of the bullets, the angle of the shots, the exact position of Emma's body relative to the points of impact. In his closing argument, Kevin Allen told the jury, "Every person in here that she touched, their lives will never be the same again. Because of him. Because of his selfishness, his lies, his possessiveness, his manipulation, and his obsessiveness of Emma Walker." The jury deliberated for 4 hours, 3 seconds. On May 8, 2018, the verdict came. 4 seconds. Guilty. 2 seconds. First-degree premeditated murder. Felony murder. Stalking. Tampering with evidence. Theft. Possession of a firearm during a dangerous felony. Reckless endangerment. As the words were read, audible gasps moved through the gallery. Riley Gall, who had been out on bond throughout the trial, was taken into custody on the spot. Outside the courthouse, the people who loved Emma held on to each other. District Attorney Charm Allen said it plainly. Today is about justice for Emma Walker and her family. Under Tennessee law, a first-degree murder conviction carries an automatic life sentence with the possibility of parole after 51 years. Additional charges added time on top of that, bringing Riley Gall's total effective sentence to approximately 60 years. At sentencing, Riley Gall chose to speak publicly for the first time. He said, "I'm sorry I took Emma away from you, that I robbed you of the experience of watching your daughter grow up. What I can do is tell the truth about that night. I wanted to scare her. I never meant to take Emma's life. Again, I am sorry." The Walker family responded without ambiguity. They had wanted the death penalty. They said Riley knew exactly what he was doing. He had been in their home. He had known where their daughter slept. Alex McCarty, one of the 2 friends who had worn the wire, said it simply. Take a life, give a life. It's exactly what he deserves. Noah Walton said, "If he couldn't have her, no one could," sort of thing. In June 2021, Gall filed a motion for a new trial. He argued insufficient evidence, jury irregularities, problems with the live streaming of the trial by the Law and Crime Network, and, most significantly, that the Call of Duty wall-banging evidence should never have been admitted.
Judge Bobby McGee, who came out of retirement specifically to hear the motion, denied it. Gall appealed to the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals. On February 27, 2023, Judge John W. Campbell Sr. issued the appellate ruling. The murder conviction was upheld in full. The court found no reversible error. A minor modification was made to one of the lesser theft charges, nothing that affected the sentence in any meaningful way. William Riley Gall remains incarcerated at the Northwest Correctional Complex in Tiptonville, Tennessee. He will not be eligible for parole consideration until he is well into his 70s, if ever. But this story doesn't end with him, and it shouldn't. Because Emma Walker didn't stop mattering the moment she died. She kept going, through the people who loved her, through the things they built in her name, through the work her mother has done to make sure stories like Emma's are never just forgotten footnotes. Jill Walker became an advocate. She threw herself into work for Marsy's Law in Tennessee, legislation that protects the rights of crime victims throughout the legal process, ensuring they have a voice, ensuring they are informed, ensuring they are not simply background figures in a story that happened to them. Jill has spoken publicly, has written about Emma, has made it her mission that the system that failed to stop what happened in November 2016 does better. She said once, in a way that stayed with everyone who read it, "How could I have known that I was not only meeting my daughter's new boyfriend, I was also meeting her future murderer?" And that raises a quiet but difficult question. How many families sit with a version of that sentence? How many people look back at a moment they can't unhave and try to make something useful out of the impossible grief of it? Jill Walker decided to try, and that is its own kind of extraordinary. The night after Emma died, students from Central High gathered for a candlelight vigil. The week that followed was declared a Memorial Week at the school. That Friday's Bobcats game, the team Emma had cheered for as a freshman, as the only freshman, the one who had just walked onto that squad and earned her place, the cheerleaders released balloons in her honor while still in uniform. At Central High School, Emma's classmates established the Emma Walker Memorial Scholarship, supporting students pursuing careers in healthcare, honoring the specific path Emma had chosen for herself. The girl who wanted to be a neonatal nurse, who'd already started moving toward it, who knew at 16 exactly where she was going. Knox County renamed the Pet Safe Dog Park at Tommy Schumpert Park. It is now the Emma Jane Walker Memorial Dog Park. If you knew Emma, if you know anything about who she was and how she loved animals, that feels exactly right. And at East Tennessee Children's Hospital, the hospital Emma had talked about working in since she was a young teenager, the one she could already see herself walking through one day, a room in the neonatal intensive care unit has been dedicated in her memory. The exact ward she had planned to work in. The ward full of the smallest, most fragile patients. She never got to walk through those doors professionally, but her name is on the wall there now. Emma Jane Walker was born on March 20th, 2000. She was 16 years old when she died. She was a cheerleader, a future nurse, a dog lover, a loyal friend,
a strong-willed, sassy, funny, fully formed human being with decades of life ahead of her. She never got the future she had planned, but the people who loved her refused to let her be only a victim. They made her a memorial, a scholarship, a dog park, a hospital room, an advocacy movement, a reason to change laws. She was 16, and she deserved every single year she didn't get. If this moved you in any way, feel free to leave a comment. It genuinely helps more than you know. And if you're not subscribed yet, this might be a good time. There are always more stories like this, stories that deserve to be told properly.